Nuclear bombs. Just two words that evoke terrifying images and bloodshed, where millions of lives were taken in an instant. But have you ever wondered what happened to the cities that were the victims of these horrific nuclear bombs? Can people, nature, and animals recover from such devastation? Today, we will explore cities like Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and Chernobyl, places where the consequences of nuclear warfare still linger, even after over 70 years. Let's take a look at these cities and uncover the untold stories of their survival. But here's the shocking question. Can we ever truly understand the magnitude of nuclear warfare, even if we didn't witness it firsthand? On August 6th and 9th, 1945, when the atomic bombs Little Boy and Fat Man were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, over 200,000 people perished instantly. These two cities were wiped out in a flash. Everything, not just the buildings, but also the people, the memories, and the hopes of millions of families. Although both cities have recovered to some extent, has that recovery truly brought life back to them? Hiroshima, one of the hardest hit cities, has undergone a miraculous process of recovery. Today, Hiroshima is not only a thriving economic hub in Japan, but also a symbol of peace. However, few know that beneath its vibrant and developed exterior, the scars of the past still linger. Studies show that while many diseases such as cancer and heart disease have decreased, survivors continue to face genetic conditions passed down through generations. Nagasaki, though it recovered faster than expected, has never fully overcome the shadow of the bombing. The survivors and their descendants continue to live with the radioactive fallout. The shocking truth is that many of them are unaware that they carry genetic mutations that could be passed on to future generations. The effects of the atomic bombs did not only devastate humans, but also nature. Plants, animals, and soil were all heavily affected by radiation. Some species of animals, particularly mammals, could not survive long in the affected areas. The consequences of nuclear bombs were not just about wiping out humanity, but also about the destruction of entire ecosystems. Chernobyl, another name that carries immense horror. On April 26, 1986, the Chernobyl nuclear disaster became one of the most catastrophic events in human history. But what's shocking to many is that, despite the fact that humans could not survive in the contaminated area, nature began to recover in ways we never expected. The area surrounding the Chernobyl nuclear power plant became a dead zone. Over 100,000 people had to be evacuated, and the region couldn't be resettled for decades. However, the startling truth is, nature returned. Wolves, deer, wild boar, and many other animals found a habitat in this area. Some species even thrived, as there was no human interference. However, this doesn't mean that there are no consequences. Scientists have discovered that these animals still carry the effects of radiation. Some species cannot reproduce, and the population of others has dramatically decreased. In addition, certain plant species are still affected by radiation, reducing the regenerative ability of these plants. Chernobyl is a place where life is returning, but it's a life that is still touched by the deep scars of radiation. Survivors of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, as well as those affected by the Chernobyl disaster, did not only face immediate death, they had to live with irreversible health consequences. Studies show that after the bombs dropped, the rate of cancer, heart disease, and birth defects surged dramatically. In Hiroshima and Nagasaki, cancer rates were 3 to 4 times higher than in other regions. And that's not to mention the mental health issues survivors faced, including post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and anxiety. In Chernobyl, the situation was no better. Recent studies show that more than 100,000 people still live with long-term health issues, from thyroid cancer to immune system problems. What's worse, these issues didn't just affect the people directly impacted, but also their children. Birth defects have been one of the most severe consequences for those born after the disaster. This makes us pause and think about the long-term effects of nuclear warfare, not only on one generation, but also on the generations that follow. Can nature truly recover from a nuclear disaster? This question arises after witnessing the miraculous recovery in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But the answer is not always as simple as it seems. In Hiroshima, We can see lush green forests, roads lined with blooming flowers. But that recovery is not entirely the result of a perfect environment. Studies show that the soil in Hiroshima and Nagasaki still has higher than normal radiation levels, especially in areas near the blast sites and the most affected locations. Moreover, the animals and plants that survived the atomic bombings weren't completely unaffected. Some species still bear the genetic marks of radiation, and changes in their genes could affect future generations. This forces us to think, is the recovery of nature truly authentic? Or is it just a thin shell, hiding the deeper, more subtle consequences that we can't easily see? With the horrific consequences nuclear warfare has left in its wake, the question arises, has the world learned the lessons of history? And can the international community stop the production and use of nuclear weapons? In 1968, the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, NPT, was signed to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons. But despite such international agreements, nuclear powers like the US, Russia, China, and others continue to maintain their nuclear arsenals. In 2017, the United Nations passed the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, calling for all countries that do not possess nuclear weapons to refuse their development and possession. However, many powerful nations, especially those that own nuclear weapons, have not signed this treaty. Current situations show that while there have been many efforts to control and eliminate nuclear weapons, the threat of nuclear war has not been fully addressed. So what can we do to ensure there's no more Hiroshima, no more Nagasaki, and no more Chernobyl? Life can never return to what it was before a disaster like this. But still, survivors and their descendants have had to continue living. They not only face physical scars, but also the psychological trauma that nuclear warfare leaves behind. In Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the survivors have become peacekeepers, living witnesses to a disaster that humanity must never repeat. They share their stories of those dark days, days when they witnessed family and friends wiped out in an instant. For the descendants of these survivors, although they did not directly witness the disaster, they too must bear the consequences of radiation and health issues passed down through generations. Children born in these areas have had to face birth defects, long-term health issues, and the overwhelming fear from the trauma their ancestors endured. This makes us ponder what nuclear warfare has left behind, not only for one generation, but for generations to come. With all we've witnessed, the big question remains: have we learned the lesson of history? The atomic bombings were not just the end of a war, they marked the beginning of an endless chain of suffering. History will never forget what happened in Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and Chernobyl. But can we avoid repeating the mistakes of the past? What can global leaders do to ensure that there is never another Hiroshima? Perhaps only when we fully grasp the horrors of nuclear warfare and its long-lasting consequences can we build a peaceful and safe world for future generations. So after everything we've discovered, the big question still stands. Can we truly learn from the past? Cities like Hiroshima and Nagasaki will always be reminders of the horrors of nuclear war. Let's not let history repeat itself. Please share this video to remind the world of the importance of peace. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Just Special Thing channel to continue discovering untold stories.